On this week's episode of the Palm Beach Current, I'm thrilled to have Amy Woods, the author of Secret Palm Beach, A Guide to the Weird, Wonderful, and Obscure, to talk all about how 84 of these stories came to be in Palm Beach County. Well, I am thrilled today on our latest episode of the Palm Beach Current to welcome in Amy Woods, who I must say her book that has just been published, I think is fascinating. And I think for listeners out there, they would love to get a copy of this and read it. It truly is a guide to the weird, wonderful, and obscure. So, Amy, welcome to the show.
Hello, thank you.
So, the name of the book, Secret Palm Beach, A Guide to the Weird, Wonderful, and Obscure. Excellent. For those of us watching on YouTube, you could see a copy of it there. You've spent quite some time in the area. What made you think this is the time to write this book?
As you know, Palm Beach is basically the center of the universe right now for many reasons. And the publishing company was looking for writers to add to their secret series. This is a series. I always love to give a shout out to my fellow authors. There actually is a secret Fort Lauderdale book that Christiana Lilly wrote a year ago. So it is a series of books that cover the whole country, pretty much every state. And they wanted to expand it. And I thought, because of the center of the universe situation, that Secret Palm Beach would be a really provocative and exciting title. And I had a bunch of ideas swirling around in my head for how to make this book a success. So that's sort of how it all evolved.
So tell me about that. The secret, swirling around in your head. What was that light bulb moment that made you think, this is going to be really good?
I sort of talk about this in the acknowledgement section of the book. The creative process, if you will, was not as elegant as, you might think. It was me standing at my kitchen counter, which, as I've pointed out before, is where I do all of my important thinking. And I sat there with a glass of wine and started literally scribbling down ideas on scraps of paper that I have all over my counter, Post-it notes, envelopes that I've opened the letter and just left the envelope on the table to use as scrap paper. And it took me about an hour, but after the hour, I had about 100, maybe 80 to 100 ideas that I thought that I knew about, some that I didn't, some that I thought, maybe this will work, maybe I can flesh it out. Then the next morning, I tried to make sense of it all and decipher my scribbling and then really make an outline to see what would work and what wouldn't. And that's how I got actually, there are 84 things. There's 84 vignettes in this book. And I had more than that. But the 84 that I came up with the exception of a couple that I had to redo, were pretty solid and could stand on their own. So that is sort of how I did it.
So let's talk about the vignettes, right? You have 84 stories. Obviously, this is years and years of thoughts and, this would be a great story. And, being a journalist, I mean, this is, I'm sure, how your mind works. You see something, you see someone out on the street, you wonder what their story is. You find an activity that, how could this happen, right? So you're constantly looking and trying to understand how things are happening and why they're happening, always asking the why. Where in the book, which one of those stories gave you chills to actually tell the story and dig into it and say, wow, like, I can't believe this is actually happening here, or this happened here?
There are a few. The one that comes to mind that did actually give me chills is one that I have been to before as a journalist covering stories for it. It was the Lake Worth Playhouse. It's actually on the cover. The Lake Worth there. And the Lake Worth Playhouse is haunted. There were two brothers who opened the Lake Worth Playhouse, at the turn of the century, last century. And made it their dream to bring performing arts to South Florida. Um, they poured all of their money into it, and things were great for a while. And then they started losing money, the Depression, Prohibition, all of that. One of the brothers committed suicide, and the other brother, literally 1 year to the date later, died of questionable causes. And ever since then, it is said that the spirits of both of those brothers linger and haunt the theater. And there has been evidence of that. In fact, I don't remember the exact name of the TV show, but there's one of those reality TV shows where they have extraterrestrial radio equipment and they go in the middle of the
Yes.
night. And they filmed one at the Lake Worth Playhouse, and you could find it on YouTube. I watched that. I've interviewed people who work there who say they hear things. They put something on the table, and then the next morning they find that it's somewhere else, like it's moved and no one's been there before. They felt taps on their shoulder. They felt hot air. So I did not go to the Lake Worth Playhouse alone. I was escorted around. But if I were to have gone alone, that really would have given me chills. And watching that TV show gave me chills too, because it was kind of like watching a horror movie. You didn't know when the ghost was going to come out and scream.
I feel like so many of those stories, I mean, people believe in ghosts, they don't believe in ghosts, they believe in hauntings, but I think everybody has a story where they try to figure out how did that happen, right? Like, what is that? And I do think everybody, whether you believe in it or not, I think you kind of do, right? Because there's too many things that add up that way that just don't make sense. But that's really interesting. What about other parts of the book? What of, the stories that you have in there, what made you laugh? What made you, say, "Wow, this is really worth the work that I'm doing." It doesn't even feel like work because this is a lot of fun to figure out.
One of the things that made me laugh out loud, and I knew part of the story, but I didn't know the entire story, is the National Enquirer Christmas tree. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Okay. The
I
tallest,
am familiar.
yes, the tallest Christmas tree like in the world. I believe it was even bigger than the Rockefeller Christmas tree before in the 70s. The National Enquirer, Generoso Pope, who was this marketing madman, erected this tree to draw attention to his magazine, his tabloid. And 1 year, so I knew that my parents would throw my brother and I in the car and we'd go down there every Christmas and look at this gigantic tree. All of the other families in Palm Beach County did too. But 1 year, Burt Reynolds, who, as I say in the book, was always fodder for their tabloid pages, because this was the time that he was married to Lonnie Anderson, was so fed up with the headlines, you know, talking about his marriage and insulting him and all of this, that he gathered up a bunch of horse manure from his ranch. He hired a helicopter pilot and loaded it into a helicopter, flew above the Christmas tree one night when they were having their ceremony, and dumped it on top of the tree to the crowd below, which made me, that's something that Burt Reynolds would totally do. It's completely on brand. How he didn't get arrested for it, I don't know. It's not legend, it's true, but that was a bold move, and that just made me laugh.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. You go back to times like that. You could never get away with so many things that happened back then before social media and before everybody had a phone in their hands. I've heard a similar story from someone that actually did work in my house, who his dad was friends with John MacArthur, who's founded Palm Beach Gardens. He would have actually been fascinating for your book, and he would tell me stories about what Mark MacArthur did back when he was trying to found the whole development of Palm Beach Gardens, to the point where, if he didn't get his way, he told me the story that they cut down a tree and the tree fell across the railroad tracks. and no commerce could happen, rail commerce between Miami and the Northeast. And he said, I'll take the tree off as soon as you give me what I'm asking for, right? I mean, so these types of things, I mean, it is amazing to hear the types of events that went on in this area, years ago, and how it helped form and shape where we are, and created the history here. You mentioned Burt Reynolds, and you have a lot of other things in here like presidential yachts, and there's so many interesting things that bring Palm Beach together. How did you decide what made the cut of the 84 stories that you had in the book? Because I'm assuming you probably had more than that. Did you have other people read? Did I'm interested in what that process was like.
I did come up with, like I was saying, not quite 100, but more than 80. And to answer your question, it's more what I could not put in the book. Um, this book and the wonderful publishing company that produces it have a policy that they could be readable by all audiences. They go in libraries, they go in schools. So I describe it as PG-13. Um, I could definitely write an R-rated version of this book because of where we live and who lives here and all of the, you know, scandalous things that have gone on in the past and are going on now. But in the spirit of having this book available to everybody, I, easily and happily chose subjects that and topics that could be suitable for all ages. So it was more of the what I couldn't put in it as opposed to what I could put in it.
Boy, that sounds like the ultimate tease for more information, right? So if you did want to do an independent sequel, that would definitely be interesting, I think. How did you verify things like local legends versus actual history? What would take me through that process of you're putting these things together. You need to make it PG or PG-13, but a lot of these things happened a long time ago, right? So how do you differentiate between, I guess, folklore and then actual fact of what happened?
We have a wonderful historical society. Almost every municipality in Palm Beach County has a historical society, as well as the county. And I made friends, maybe enemies, after how so many phone calls and emails of these wonderful workers at the historical society who helped me find information and sent me links and told me what books to read. So I relied a lot on our historians, our local historians. I also did a bit of reading on my own and, sitting in front of the computer for 6 months, staring at Google and other sources was part of the process. And going to these places, like I mentioned, the Lake Worth Playhouse, but also, um, you had mentioned I'm a journalist. I was the notables editor at the Palm Beach Post for 11 years, and I covered a lot of philanthropic topics and met a lot of celebrities. So I kind of had an idea of like the pulse of the society part of that. So I kind of knew a lot of stuff. And I also freelanced for local magazines like Jupiter Magazine and Palm Beach Illustrated, a Palm Beach Gardens magazine that doesn't exist anymore, but it was very popular. So I've written about like everything you can imagine, and I've interviewed about everybody you can imagine. So I kind of had a base of knowledge that I knew what was fact and what was fiction. And to get to your other point about what's the difference between legend and lore and history, sometimes that line is blurred and legend and lore becomes history, which I think is kind of fun, and
Right.
I had fun, without dispelling lies, um, piquing people's interests about that, lore, legend, history.
I think so too. I mean, I think there's something a little more romantic to the idea of like tying together the legend, lore, and history. It's not embellishing, but I think it's a lot more enjoyable to read. I think it's more enjoyable to hear that story. I mean, maybe it wasn't all that exciting, but the way that it had an effect on things, kind of changed and made it more of that legend or lore that's there. Stepping into your journalist side, Amy, I mean, having written about so many different things, what is one of those stories that still sticks with you to this day? I mean, I always find it fascinating to talk to journalists because you guys always have the story in your head and how you want to craft it, but you're trying to kind of look at different angles. But what's that story that still sticks with you after all these years?
It's not one particular story. It's when I was at Notables, like I mentioned, I had the opportunity and the honor to interview celebrities who were doing good in the community. And for a while, I did that once a month. So those moments are the most memorable. My first celebrity was Tico Torres. Do you know who he is? He is the drummer for Bon Jovi, and he
Okay.
lived in Admiral's Cove. I don't believe he does anymore, but he lived in Jupiter, and he had a fundraiser every year. It was a golf event that raised money for a children's charity. Um, Jack and Barbara Nicholas, I got to meet and interview both of them in person about the wonderful things that they do for their healthcare foundation, which has become synonymous with the PGA Tour and especially Barbara Nicholas. So that was memorable. Sitting down with Jack Nicklaus next to me is amazing. He's the best golfer in the world. So there are other celebrities that I've had, like I said, had the honor to interview, and it wasn't like a big scandalous story that sticks out in my mind. Although I've covered those before, the ones that are the most memorable are the feel good ones with important, wonderful souls who make the world better.
Right. Any of those stories that come to mind? The stories that you just highlighted there?
Uh, well, who else have I interviewed? We mentioned Burt Reynolds. He, of the celebrities that I've had the good fortune of meeting, I've met him the most. And I sort of like miss him like he's a friend, although he wasn't a friend, but I feel like he was a friend because he was just so down to earth. He did a lot for the acting community, helping young actors find their way without, you know, helping them keep their feet on the ground, but also finding their niche. I sat in on one of his acting classes when they were offered. They're obviously not anymore, and that whole place has turned into something different. But he was just right there telling an actor to say this line instead of that line and to move this way instead of that way. That was pretty amazing when you're looking at the biggest sex symbol in the 70s who posed nude for Playgirl magazine, or not Playgirl, Cosmopolitan, which, while we're talking about it, one of the fun facts in the book is that after that nude pose for Cosmopolitan on the bearskin rug, do you remember seeing that image?
Yes.
After that came out, some woman had the light bulb moment to start Playgirl magazine. So Burt Reynolds is responsible for Playgirl magazine, which I think is also kind of funny.
Huh, that's fascinating. I did not know
But
that.
getting back to his non-sex symbol, m- you know, persona, he really was well loved and revered by the acting community, and they either called him Boss or Mr. Reynolds. That's how they addressed him when they were
Okay,
speaking with them.
interesting. Well, hey, I mean, I think everything in this book sounds fascinating. I want to get back to the book in a second, but on all of these episodes, I go through this part of the show, and I think a lot of people find it interesting. I like to ask people locally a few questions, right? And one of them is typically I'll just start with the restaurant because they kind of go together. But what is your go to restaurant here in the area? If you had to go have one lunch or one dinner or even a breakfast, where is that place going to be?
E.R. Bradley's in West Palm Beach.
Okay, what's your go-to dish there?
See, I'm not a food person. I like to go to restaurants that have ambiance and atmosphere. And E.R. Bradley's, my place is at the bar outside where you can look out at the intercoastal and feel the breeze. So
Right. And they're in the news right now. I mean, as a journalist, I'm interested in your take. If that's your go-to spot, what's your thought of this new redevelopment of West Palm Beach?
I have mixed feelings about that. Uh, I don't know what's true and what's not true. I know there's a lot of opposition to it. They redeveloped that area once and it was not favorable. It, I I don't know. I don't know how to answer that question, but I don't actually live in West Palm Beach. So I'm not following it as closely as if it was happening in Palm Beach Gardens, which is where I live. But if E.R. Bradley's were to be the sacrificial lamb of that, I would be sad. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, no, I think that's the resounding thing that I hear from most people right now. I think people just want to know details, but for the sake of the show, it is a Palm Beach County show, and I think you naming that restaurant, it was interesting timing to say that. Uh, what is your favorite hidden spot for locals? Right, what's a place that maybe people that lived here for a long time they don't know about, but you think it's absolutely amazing and you want to give them a shout out?
I can't tell you. People will get mad at me if I say that. Oh. Uh, well, this isn't really in the book. Parts of it are, but there is a wonderful beach walk that I used to take, and it starts in Palm Beach Shores. There is a pedestrian path that has all of these native trees planted along it. It's managed by the town of Palm Beach Shores, so it's very well maintained. And it goes right through the middle of the neighborhood. It goes literally right through the neighborhood, but there are the cars can cross east and west, but they can't cross north and south. So you're walking along this pathway, looking at all these beautiful trees, and then you get to the Palm Beach Inlet, and there's a beautiful pavilion there where I know people have gotten married there. And you can see the boats come in and out and the cruise ships, and then you're looking across at Palm Beach where Reef Road is. That pedestrian path is populated by, dog walkers and people, riding their bikes and stuff. But I don't think a lot of people outside of Palm Beach Shores and Singer Island know that that's available for them. And it's a beautiful asset. And it goes right through, like I said, right through the center of beautiful Palm Beach Shores. And then you have a beautiful view of the inlet. And then you can take the pathway all the way down to the pump house. And then you can get on the beach and walk all the way back and just make a big square. It's about
Well,
takes about an hour. So I'm guessing it's probably like 2 miles or so. It's a beautiful walk. Yeah, You know, it's just something so South Florida to do, and that we have the ability to to do that because a lot of places it's private. You can't walk along the beach or through the middle of the neighborhood like that.
I think you just planted the seed for someone's next beach walk that they're looking to do that they're unfamiliar with. So, thank you for that, Amy. Tell everybody how they can buy the book and how they can get in touch with you or follow you if they'd like to.
The book is I always have the books on hand for sale. Uh, and I say books because I do have a second one. The first one I wrote was this 100 Things to Do in Jupiter Before You Die. It came out in 2023. This one just came out in February. Uh, and the Secret Palm Beach book is $30. The 100 Things to Do in Jupiter Before You Die book is $20. And if you're local, you can text me, you can call me, you can email me, and I will be happy to deliver it to you. That's part of me being a local author and trying to meet people and get the word out about my books. Also, if you're not local, you can get them on Barnes& and Noble, online. They also are in the Palm Beach Gardens and Tequesta Barnes& and Nobles. and you can get them on Amazon as well.
Okay, perfect. And we'll
And
make
I
sure we
should
put
I
the
should mention, I'm sorry, you can get them on the publishing company's website, Reedy Press.
Okay, excellent. And we'll make sure we put the links up on our social media channels and things like that and tag you in it so people can find out. I mean, look, it isn't often you can order a book and the author brings it to you. I think I'd probably choose that if I was given the option. But Amy, it was a pleasure to have you on. I think the book is amazing. We'll do our best to promote it. And looking forward to reading. I've never read the other book, so I'll have to check out the other book. But thank you so much for coming on as a
All
guest.
right, thank you.